And I see
everyone.
some
Thank you for.
folks. Ah, sorry, Rob. I see some folks are writing where they're joining from. I feel like it's important to say I'm joining you all from New York today. And I know, Gina, where are you joining us from?
I'm in Austin, Texas today after not 7 days in 9 cities across the state.
Oh, my
Just got
goodness.
home.
Wow. And I was complaining. I was at four protests and gave 3 speeches over the last 4 days. So, but it sounds like you have me beat by a long shot. Okay, we're 2 minutes in. If Substack or someone is going to be editing this, let's cut out the intro. I'll do a formal countdown and we will get started. So 3, 2, 1. Good morning, everyone. This is Robert Hubbell from today's edition newsletter, and I am really excited to have with me two leaders, both in American politics and in the Latino voter movement. So we have Gina Hinojosa. Welcome. You are running for governor of Texas. And we have Catherine Pichardo, who's a longtime friend of the newsletter and the executive director of Latino Victory. And we have all met each other on a couple of occasions. Gina, you and I met very briefly in New York at the wonderful
Yes.
event
Yes.
sponsored by Latino Victory,
That's
where
right.
Heather Cox Richardson interviewed Lin-Manuel Miranda and Hillary Clinton, which I have to say was a phenomenal event. Um, so let's, Catherine, just remind everyone your role with Latino Victory, and then Gina will go over to you to have you introduce yourself to people who are joining the call. We've got about 260 people joining, and more will come on. Go ahead,
Right.
Catherine.
Thanks so much, Rob. And for those who I haven't met before, I am Catherine Pichardo, President and CEO of Latino Victory. We're a national organization focused on one singular mission, which is to build Latino political power at all levels of government so that our voices and values could be reflected in the policies that move our country forward. And I'm really excited for this conversation with Gina and Rob. We've recently started the Texas Latino Victory Texas Coalition, which is a multi-year effort to really do something that Democrats have somehow failed to do in the past, which is in a real way engage Latino voters, engage local Latino leaders, and really do this in a year-round way, so that we're not doing what usually happens, which is folks parachuting into communities a couple months before election day and saying vote for this guy. And so we all know that doesn't work. And but yet folks sometimes are slow to catch on. And so from our perspective at Latino Victory, we are getting to the work right away. There's no time to waste. And certainly Texas is going to be ground zero for not only us winning back the House of Representatives this cycle, but also winning back the White House in 28. And certainly we're excited about potentially having our first Latina governor in Texas. And so thank you, Rob, and to everyone who's listening for joining in this important conversation.
Thank you for that, Catherine. Well, so Gina, tell us a little bit about yourself. For many of the people on the call, this will be their first exposure to you. But let me just say again how excited I am that in Texas, we have a young, dynamic Latina who is running for governor. Take it away.
Well, thank you, Robert. You just made my day calling me young. I really appreciate it. um, so, Robert, I never meant to run for office. I ran for the school board because my son's school was threatened for closure. He was in kindergarten and I got mad and I ran for the
Mhm.
school board and I won. Let me tell you how much I never meant to do this. I made my husband promise before we got married that he would never run for office. So this was not at all in the plan. Um, but in that election to the school board, there was such a great community spirit and understanding of our power to take back our neighborhood public schools. Once I was on the school board, I understood that The reason our schools are shutting down in Austin and all over the state is because the state takes our money and then doesn't invest it back into our needs.
Mhm.
So I ran for the Texas House and I won. And that's where I've been fighting for working Texans for the last almost 10 years now. It's been 5 terms. And in that fight, what I have found in Texas is that the reason why our schools are shutting down, though our property taxes have skyrocketed under Greg Abbott, is because we're all paying the Greg Abbott corruption tax. He takes our money, he gives it to his billionaire donors to line their pockets, yet not just our schools are going without and our kids are going without. We have the highest rate of uninsured in the nation, most amount of uninsured kids, most amount of uninsured working people, veterans, the list goes on. People are struggling with paying their electric bills. I mean, on and on and on, Texans are struggling. I see an opportunity win, and that's why I'm running so that we can have a governor who works for the people of Texas and not the billionaire donors.
Well, thank you for that. Tell us a little bit about your upbringing. Where did you grow up, and what? I mean, you mentioned how you got into public service, but what was it about your upbringing in Texas that has compelled you to do something that's very hard these days, which is to be an elected official?
Yeah, so I grew up in the Rio Grande Valley, born and raised in the Rio Grande Valley. I went to public school in Brownsville, Texas, the southernmost tip of Texas on the border with Mexico. And in the summers, I spent time with my grandmother in Mission, Texas. And my grandmother always taught me this lesson. It's a saying we have in Spanish, and it's no te dejes. So I don't know what the exact literal translation is, Catherine. I don't know if you know, but the way I've translated it is fight back. And in our culture, it's almost like a scorn, right? Like um, know your worth and defend it. And
Mhm.
so that is the spirit with which I was raised. So that's why when my son's school was threatened for closure, I fought back. And now when I see all over this state that Governor Abbott is taking our money and building a system to use against us, I'm fighting back.
Well, let's talk about Texas in particular for a moment. I'm going to go a little bit off script, but I think this is familiar territory for both Catherine and Gina. From an outside observer, I mean, we need and want more than anything to turn Texas blue. And I think there's a good case for turning Texas blue because of I don't think there's political registration in Texas at the ballot box, but we can sort of tell how many Democrats there are versus how many Republicans. And there's a good base of Democratic voters in Texas. But overall, Texas lags behind the rest of the nation in turnout, I believe. Can Catherine, does that align with your understanding, and what can we do about it? And then Gina, can you comment on that?
Well, I'll briefly tell you. And by the way, this is not just Texas, but it's really around the country as it relates to our Latino community. And Texas is a heavily Latino state. Let's not forget that, right? So, as it relates to Latino community, there's definitely a gap in voting, but it really starts early. We have a voter registration gap where we have
Mhm.
millions of Latino eligible voters that are not registered, right? And then once you register them, there's an education gap in terms of, what does the system look like? How do they vote? What are early voting registration dates? How do they vote by mail? How do they, show up at the polls? Do they need IDs, right? Because in different states, you have different requirements. And so there's that information gap. So there's a lot of voter registration and voting education that organizations like Latino Victory are engaging in, which is necessary to increase voter turnout, which is the fourth piece, I would argue, because there's also education that we have to do around issues. Our community has been targeted for a lot of misinformation and disinformation. Um, specifically, I would say in the 2024 cycle, but it's something that we've seen grow, I would say, since 2016, which, by the way, is directly related also to how the electorate has moved since
Mhm.
2016.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
so fast forward now, you get folks registered to vote and you educate them on the process, and you also educate them around the issues that matter, whether it be economic opportunity or healthcare or climate or community safety. And then it's about turnout. And so I think, by the way, that's where, in some ways, in the past, our party has failed because they've been so focused on turnout. But it's like, guys, we missed the whole life cycle of the voter. And
Right.
so that's what we're trying to change in Texas, through the work that we're doing. And certainly there's a lot of work that we need to do around turnout, but I want to encourage everyone to think about how we get to the kind of turnout we want to see.
Well, let me suggest one way to do it is to put a dynamic Latina candidate at the top of the ticket. And
That's one good
that
way.
that that's we have to give Democrats a reason to show up, and Gina is that reason. But Gina, let me take this to a more somber place. After the killing of Renee Nicole Good, I know I have seen from my readers that Texans and Latinos in Texas, in particular, have taken to the streets in protest of the actions of ICE. Can you give us some sense of what you're seeing on the ground in Texas?
It's horrific, that shooting of an American mom in the face and killing her. We all saw it. We also saw there was no justification for it. And it's heartbreaking to Latinos, to Texans, to most Americans, right? Um, the immigration raids are hitting the Latino community particularly hard. I was just in South Texas for the last 5 days, and what I heard on the ground there were countless stories of people feeling targeted, people
Mhm.
feeling like, I mean, everybody knows someone who's been detained or deported, and I'm talking about longtime members of the community, beloved members of the community who ran the panaderia or the bakery down the street, right? Um, this is not about targeting criminals. It's about targeting the Latino community. In fact, I heard a story about an American who is being detained in South Texas because he got swept up in one of the many raids that are now happening at job sites. And
Mhm.
because he is a naturalized citizen, like my mother, my own mother, who is a naturalized citizen, the whole process is now being questioned and he's being held for now. So understand that this community feels very American, very much patriotic. That is a pride that we have, a love for our country. So to be targeted as not American enough is a real slap in the face to our community. And it is what I am hearing everywhere. It is a big difference from what I heard last election cycle,
Mhm.
where
Mhm.
people were mad about border security. Remember, we had the the waves of immigrants coming and people sleeping under bridges. It did not feel like it was under control. It felt chaotic and people didn't like it. And I do think Democrats got punished because of it. But this is very different now. Nobody wants this. I talked to members of the business community, to just everyday members of the community who are angry about it. And I do think it is something that is a strength for us as Democrats. We all want border security, but we all know that we must treat all people humanely, and we should not be targeting American families and our own communities in these sweeps.
Right. What's amazing and sad at the same time is that the killing of Renee Good, because it was on video, because she was a mom, just of her friendly affect before it happened, and then the just aggressive tactic of Jonathan Ross. It's really touched the American people, and I saw some polling this morning for the first time, and you don't have to comment on this at all because it's a controversial topic. But for the first time in a YouGov poll, I believe the majority of the people who responded to the poll said that ICE should be defunded, and that's going to be a difficult congressional political effort, and we'll see where that takes us. But it indicates that people have moved from where they are. So I want to go to Catherine and ask how you think that the Latino community is reacting to this writ large, and then come back to Gina and ask you specifically what you think it looks like in Texas going forward to deal with immigration as an issue. So, Catherine, what do you see in the national Latino community, recognizing that to say the Latino community does not mean that all Latinos think alike or have the same political positions?
Thank you, Rob. And yes, the Latino community is diverse, but I think that we can find unity around our values, and we all value life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, which are not Latino ideals; they are American ideals. And I will tell you that um, to Gina's point, it's important to note that yes, our community has been targeted for ICE enforcement in a real way, and we're seeing the results in the way that businesses have emptied out from folks being afraid to be in public spaces where ICE might do a raid. You see that in the way workers are afraid to go to work, parents are afraid to send their kids to school. You see lots of folks who are concerned about the militarization of our communities. ICE
Mhm,
is not making communities safer. It is making them more dangerous because it's
mhm.
putting people in harm's way. Um, Certainly, there are lots of folks, and we've made public statements on our lack of trust in what DHS is doing, and specifically calling on the removal of Christine Nome. And I know that there's a movement which we might see soon in Congress, perhaps to impeach her as well, because what we're seeing really is an overreach of this administration in the way that they've implemented immigration enforcement. And I cannot state that enough. I want to take a step back from immigration. We've seen an overreach of this
Right.
administration in a number of different areas. And I will tell you, yesterday, I was in a happy space celebrating the inauguration of Elena Moreno as the first Latina mayor of New Orleans. I took a moment yesterday in my lunch break to go to the World War II Museum, the National World War II Museum that's in New
Great museum.
Orleans. Great museum. And there was a quote there by President Franklin Roosevelt on the wall, which hit hard because there've been a lot of parallels that have been drawn with what's happening in America today as it relates to immigrants and some of what we've seen earlier this century. And the quote was this: "Together with other free people, we are now fighting to maintain our right to live among our world neighbors in freedom, in common decency, and without fear of assault." And I got to tell you, there was a tear that came to my eye because what I see in America today is un-American. And so I'll stop there. And I definitely want to get back to Gina and Texas, because honestly, that's how we win. Folks, we need to win back the House. We need to win back the White House. And we need to get folks elected who are going to fight for our communities, who are going to fight for our rights, and who are going to fight for our values, not just as Latinos, but as Americans. So,
Right, and We've had a couple of hundred people join in the last 10 minutes, so I just want to reset and say that this is Robert Hubbell from today's edition. I have with me Catherine Pichardo, who is the executive director of Latino Victory, and we have Gina Hinojosa, who is a Democrat who is running to become governor of Texas. And boy, do we need a Latina governor of Texas at this moment in time. It's hard to watch from outside of the state what Greg Abbott is doing, and I can't imagine what it's like to be living under that regime at this point. So let's get back to your campaign, Gina. You announced in Brownsville, Texas, I think, and Texas is or is becoming a majority minority state. So, and we're looking at potentially a wave election. Talk about your candidacy, what you hope to accomplish, how you think all of these issues might help propel you to the governor's mansion in Texas.
Well, running for governor of Texas is like running for president. I mean, there is so much ground to cover. I was talking to a county commissioner in Harris County. She said the size of my precinct is the size of 5 states, right? So we're constantly on the go talking to Texans of all walks. I want to speak real quick to what Catherine mentioned about how these immigration raids are making us less safe, not more. I had an opportunity to sit down with the district attorney of Harris County, who told me he cannot prosecute sex offender cases because the witnesses have been deported. He's got cases where sex predators are not being held to account because there's no one to testify on it. We used to make exceptions for these kinds of things, but now with these quotas that are about making private prisons more money, right? People are even trying to leave the country and being detained and not being allowed to flee because of these quotas. So yes, I just wanted to kind of end there that it is not even just in the Valley. It is not just Latino voters. It is all of us who are feeling vulnerable and less secure with these immigration raids. But what I'm hearing across Texas is Texans are desperate for change. Greg Abbott has been the governor for almost 12 years. He is trying to be the longest serving governor in Texas history. So, what the polling shows is that he has the highest disapprovals of anybody on the ballot, higher than John Cornyn. He has higher disapprovals than Ken Paxton.
Oh, God. That's saying something.
That is saying something. And it is because now, after almost 12 years, Texans have found out who Greg Abbott is, and they don't like him, and they want change. And so we're offering a different vision of the future. For too long, Democrats have made excuses and defended systems that are indefensible. And in Texas in particular, people are struggling and have been struggling for too long. My campaign is about a clean slate and a fresh start. We are an economic powerhouse in the world, right? We rank amongst nations when it comes to our economic power. We should be thriving as Texans. We should not be
Mhm.
struggling so much. So we need to build a Texas that works for everyday working Texans. Right now, Texans work more hours than the national average, but we make less than the $15 kind of. It's
Mhm.
not even minimum wage, right? But it is. We think of the $15 as kind of an economic floor
Living
after
wage.
a living wage, right? Um, and so Texans are struggling mightily. The cost of housing is going up. The cost of healthcare is out of reach. With the expiration of the subsidies, 1 million Texans will lose health insurance. We could put 1 million Texans on health insurance by just expanding Medicaid, pulling down those federal dollars that Texans have already put into the system, yet they're going to fund healthcare for Californians and people all over this country who are not working Texans. There are so many ways that we can deliver real results for Texans. We just need a governor who puts the interest of Texans first.
What is the reaction that you're feeling on the campaign trail? I mean, when you talk to people, what issues are they bringing up most. I mean, obviously, the country is going through, incredible constitutional crises. We're invading foreign countries. We're threatening to invade NATO allies, and yet affordability and healthcare are issues. What are you hearing both from voters, and then what's the reaction to you in your campaign?
So Texans are worried about just being able to make it for themselves and their families. The latest concern that I'm hearing a lot about are electricity costs. So in
Mm.
Texas, the average electricity bill has gone up about $40 a month since 2021. That is directly tied to Greg Abbott's corruption. In 2021, we all suffered through Winter Storm Uri, where many of us were without electricity for days. I spent 4 days in my own home in freezing weather with my family, fearful of when the lights were going to come back on. But that was, and hundreds of Texans died. While that was happening, the gas companies were allowed by Greg Abbott to withhold gas that we desperately needed, withhold gas from the grid while Texans were literally freezing to death in their homes. They withheld it until the price was high enough so they could make billions of dollars in minutes. Greg Abbott let them get away with it. Then he put the cost of paying those bills on Texas taxpayers. He, in return, got a check for $1 million from the CEOs of one of the biggest gas companies in Texas. And now all of us are paying more for electricity. Our electricity bills are about to go up about $600 a year because Greg Abbott has now decided that Texas will have more data centers than any other state in the country, and that we will all pay for making it happen. And that amounts to about $600 a year. So when you tell Texans the reason why you are struggling is because you're paying the Greg Abbott corruption tax and you explain it to them, there is this moment of aha, like an understanding that explains the struggle they're feeling. And so we're going around the state, to Catherine's point, bringing Latinos along, bringing Texans along so they understand their experience is grounded in a government that is broken and that does not work for them.
And do you see any generational divide here? You have younger Latino populations in some of the major urban cities. Is everyone responding to the issues the same way, or do people have different concerns about what it means to be Latino and Latina in Texas?
What I am seeing is that with young people in general, there is a real cynicism about whether or not government can work for them. They've really only experienced Trump. And so um, we have to speak directly to them, and not just speak to them, but listen to them. So anytime I come across young people, I ask them, you tell me what you want to see. This is
Mhm,
our opportunity to win. This is
mhm.
our opportunity to make change. We can do this together. That's the only way we can do this. And so we're in conversation with young people about what they need to see from their government, what they need to see from a candidate to get excited. But this is a people powered campaign. We are building that infrastructure to bring everybody in so that they can participate in the way that they feel strongly about, in the way that they want to. And we're building that now because we see real opportunity here in November. This is the midterm election with Trump in the White House. The last time we had that circumstance in Texas was 2018. Democrats swept. We picked up 12 seats in the Texas House. We flipped judges' seats, and we won the county judge seat in Harris County. The county judge is like the mayor of the county, right? No one thought it would happen. There was no institutional support. There was no investment. It happened organically. And we are already seeing that happening all across
Mhm.
this state where Democrats have never won before. And so it is exciting, but it means that we have to be all in.
Okay, we're sort of at the end of our allotted time. So what I want to do is I want to ask Catherine to address a question that someone has posted, and then Gina, I want to come back to you to close. and have you tell us what we can do to help your campaign, both in terms of volunteering and donating. So, Catherine, James posted the question: what strategies might get a lot more eligible voters in Texas to actually vote? Low turnout in Texas is a chronic problem. What plans does Latino Victory have with respect to Texas for the midterms?
So, in terms of strategies, certainly early engagement, consistent engagement, and issues driven campaigns is what get voters to the poll. You have to give them a reason to vote for a particular candidate. Otherwise, they just won't be engaged. And what we saw in last cycle's elections, frankly, specifically at the top of the ticket, was that a lot of voters, not just Latinos, stayed home. A lot of Democrats stayed home because they felt unmotivated. So you had Trump, who won about a third of the electorate, Kamala Harris, who won about a third of the electorate, a few less votes, and then about a third of the electorate that didn't participate. And so getting to those undecided voters, unengaged voters, lazy voters, however you want to call them, we want it is a real priority for us. And how we're doing that really is with early consistent engagement, working with partners on the ground, not reinventing the wheel, but rather building infrastructure around it, filling the gaps of support. And talking about the issues that really matter. Voters told us what they were concerned about in 2024. We knew that honestly, even without polling, I could have told you what was happening based on my Sunday dinners with my family.
Right.
But without that early engagement, we're not going to get the results we want. And that's why we are investing and getting boots on the ground, even without a lot of support. But certainly, uh, getting the wheels running, because last minute parachuting doesn't work, and that's why we're making it happen now.
I want to underscore that point because it's frustrating to people who want to help and donate that they don't know where to direct their money. And one of the things that Latino Victory does, like many good grassroots organizations, is that they're there in the year round. They're not just there in the last 30 days before the election asking for money to run ads on television. You're out there developing candidates, guiding candidates, developing issues, polling, and doing those sorts of things. So Latina Victory is doing wonderful work every day of the year. So thank you for that. And then Gina,
Thank you,
what
Rob. And by the way, if anyone wants to be part of the effort, please go to latinovictory.org and find the bright red button to donate. We really appreciate your support. And that will also sign you up to get information about the work that we're doing
right.
and how you could engage more.
Right, and also, Latino Victory has a Substack, you can and an Instagram account, I believe you can subscribe to those to keep up. So, Gina, here's the question. We're here, this is really about you. What can we help how can we help you to win, in 2026 to become the first, Latina governor of Texas?
Well, let me tell you why every American should be Texan in this midterm election. What happens in this midterm election will impact substantially every American. Let me tell you why.
Mm,
Because Texas is slated to gain 4 to 5 congressional seats
right.
before the decade is up. We have 4 years left to flip Texas, to turn it blue, or the math no longer works for Democratic control of Congress. And because congressional seats equate to electoral votes, the math no longer works for Democratic control of the White House unless Texas flips before the end of the decade. And this midterm election, with Trump in the White House, the data shows will be our best chance to make those gains before the decade is up. It is the state government. The governor has veto authority. The legislature approves those maps. It is the state government that determines what those maps look like, how they are drawn. We have to fight back with everything we've got. My record is one. The Statesman quoted that I was an insurgent leader in the Texas House. The reason why it's so hard for Texans to vote here is because Governor Abbott has done everything in his power to try to minimize our power, minimize our vote. So, what I would ask everyone to do is to please make a contribution, make a donation. You can find more about me at ginafortexas.com. We have to raise tens of millions of dollars to compete against Greg Abbott. But here's what we know. In 2018, Beto got 64% of the Latino vote. In 2026, when I get 64% of the Latino vote, I win because there are more of us now. So this is doable, but we have to be a well-funded campaign, and we have to be very strategic with this effort. And so I would love to work with you all, and Catherine has been a great partner in this so that we can win this governor's race.
Well, thank you for running. I mean, this is a hard time, as I said, to be a candidate, to be an elected official, and it takes a special type person with courage and determination to do it. So we really appreciate it. I am going to include a link to contribute to your campaign. And listen, for anyone who is watching this, donating is great, but we're at the stage of the campaign where people need to know that Gina Hinojosa is running for governor of Texas. Tell your friends, post it on Blue Sky, put it on Facebook, whatever you can do to get the word out helps. So thank you for joining us today, Catherine. Thank you for everything you do all the time. And Gina, we wish you the best of luck. And if there's anything we can do in the future to help your campaign, do not hesitate to ask.
Thank you, Robert, and thank you, Catherine.
Good luck.
Thank you. Take care, everyone. Have a good day.
Bye.
Bye-bye.